Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. Let's talk about the Paris Agreement on greenhouse gas emissions. Specifically, let's talk about how it could affect us, not 20 years down the road, not in terms of projections, but right now. On November 4th, the United States signaled the final step in withdrawing from the Paris Accord. And that's even though, in 2017, the mayors involved with the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative implored the White House not to leave the accord. Their concerns have to do with the competitiveness of our commodity exports. Under the accord, the signatories can set up a tax or penalty to trade with non-signatory nations. The European Union has signaled that they would like to pursue this for nations not signed to the agreement. And that means U.S. commodities could face a price disadvantage in Europe. And the European Union is the Mississippi River Valley's fifth biggest trading partner. Joining us to talk about what this means for our economy here is Colin Wellenkamp. He's the executive director of the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to be here.
We're also joined today by Kimmswick Mayor Phil Stang. He's the Missouri representative on the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. Mayor Stang, welcome to the show.
Well, good morning.
For those of you listening, have you seen trade tariffs or penalties affecting your business? How are the U.S.'s various trade wars impacting you? You can give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL on air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. Now, Mayor Stang, I know you're here because you're worried about this, but help us understand why. What could happen if there's a tax or a penalty on U.S. commodity producers?
Well, it's fairly straightforward. We were very disappointed in the pullout from the Paris Accords. In 2017, the Mayors Association warned the White House of the negative impacts that we would have. And the other piece of not only the economics that are associated with it, but if you don't have a seat at the table, you can't make any decisions. And the Mississippi River Basin is the biggest commodity developer in the world, and that's a severe impact on the entire Midwest.
We're going to be basically trying to play this game at a big disadvantage. Talking to Missouri farmers, are they concerned about this?
Oh, yes, they are. They're severely impacted by the tariff wars at the moment, and this just adds another negative impact to exactly how they're going to sell their products worldwide.
Now, Colin, I know your organization has, as we said, they implored the U.S. not to do this. Tell us a little bit about who you all represent.
Sure. We are an association of 95 mayors on the Mississippi River in 10 states. We're mayor-run, mayor-led. You have to be the mayor of a municipality directly adjacent to the main stem to be a member of our association.
And what do you qualify as directly adjacent? Who counts on that?
Sure, of course. There can't be any other municipal jurisdiction between your city and the water's edge.
You have to literally touch the water.
Not necessarily. We've got cities like Clarksdale, Mississippi. It's 2.5 miles of floodplain between the water's edge and the city's boundary, but there's nothing between Clarksdale and the river.
Okay.
There are no other jurisdictions.
That makes sense. Thank you for walking me through that. Sure. Now, I know you were involved with traveling with the mayoral delegation abroad on 4 different trips. You went to Paris and Rome, Mexico, and then Germany most recently in 2017. Right. What sense did you get from the countries abroad as to whether they support this kind of tax or penalty on U.S. goods?
Well, originally, the Article 6 of the Paris Accord was originally set up, so we're told, in order to help nations use their trade to finance their GHG emission reductions.
Those are greenhouse gas.
Correct,
okay.
Right. Any kind of effort, you could kind of build that into your trade market and help you pay for it at home. However, things have changed. So now it's being propositioned that Article 6 could also be used as a penalty in order to reward signatory countries for climate performance and put a tax or a levy on goods coming from non-signatory countries into various trade zones where signatories are trading and working together.
Okay, so this was first meant to be a carrot. It's kind of turned into a stick here.
Yeah, and that's how it's been sort of propositioned to us, and it's very concerning because our communities have spent years building markets abroad, and where the European Union is our 5th largest trading partner, China's our 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're already being impacted,
right? And China is a signatory, so it wouldn't affect them, but it would affect us if they decide to go down that road.
Mayor Stang, what are some of the products specifically that are coming out of towns like yours, or out of other entities that are part of this area?
Well, I think one of the major things you could look to is soybeans in the area in Missouri. Mm-hmm. Kimmswick per se is a destination. It's a recreational town. It's a very historic town on the river, but we are surrounded in that entire area by farms, mm-hmm. and vast majority of it is soybeans.
And I imagine that prices are a major factor in where people get their soybeans from.
Oh, absolutely, and that's where they've been already. They've been negatively impacted by the tariff wars. Additionally, over the past year, we've suffered major flooding, which has really caused consternation among the loss of product, loss of availability to the river itself under the floods. And so with that impact, we certainly don't need to have additional impacts of penalties provided by this accord.
So Colin Wellenkamp, what can we do to ensure that our markets abroad remain whole when something like this is looming? Is there anything that can be done?
Yeah, if we stay out. Incidentally, it's free to stay in. You can stay in and stay at the bargaining table and not do a thing.
Yeah.
Not incur any costs at home. Just be at the bargaining table in order to have a vote and a say on how these trade agreements are structured through Article 6. That's basically the value point. But if we're not going to be at the table,
which sounds like the direction the Trump administration is going.
Exactly. If we're going to be outside the room, and the rest of the countries are going to be inside putting these policies together, what we are hopeful is if we can show that there is still GHG mitigation happening with the product itself that we are trying to trade, and that it is working to meet the spirit of the accord, that will forestall penalties from being applied.
Give me an example of that. You're saying like an individual company would attempt to show that they're doing something about their own greenhouse gas emissions?
Companies as well as organizations working on acreage with farmers. We're not just talking about farm products. We're also talking about manufactured chemicals, chemical goods, food, as well as finished metals and other bulk commodities. Doesn't have to be agricultural commodities, but any of those other commodities, the $42 billion worth of commodities that come in and out of Missouri, mm-hmm. $8.1 billion of that is ag, but the rest is various other commodities like chemicals and metals and bulk goods. Any number of those, if we can show through the supply chain, mm-hmm. various supply chain actors from inception to production, are working to reduce GHG emissions, and essentially that is just better business mm-hmm. too, because sustainable business is better business. You make more money over a longer period of time, employing more people, having a more secure product chain. If we can show that we're meeting the spirit of the accord in that regard through the global commodity supply chain, then we hope that would forestall action.
Okay. How optimistic is that on your part, the idea that somebody would want to look at these entities as smaller pieces as opposed to just saying, you're from the U.S., we're slapping this on you?
I would say, and Mayor Stang is an optimist.
You think this could be something where
in this regard,
these individual companies could get a seat at the table, or trade associations?
We wouldn't have a seat at the table because subnational entities don't. That's just the way the UN works. But when we went to Paris in 2015, and then we went to Rome and Mexico, and then most recently, like you said, Germany, there was excitement to work with us.
Okay.
There was our mayors were received very positively, very well. global commodity supply chain actors, both government and private, were excited to see the mayor of Davenport and the mayor of St. Gabriel, Louisiana, there on the ground with them in Germany working on these issues. So I think that's there, but what will ultimately tell the story is Glasgow next November. That's going to be the moment.
Okay. So we'll have a much better sense then of whether some of these contingency plans have a chance and what the U.S. is going to do as well.
Yeah, but it really comes down to what is the work being done on the ground, and that's where it hits Mayor Stang, and that's why the mayors are so critically important here.
Mayor Stang, Missouri has sort of a reputation, I guess, of overall the rural areas are sometimes very conservative, and these might be people that you would expect to see not care about things like greenhouse gas emissions. We're told that's more of an issue that the Democrats are into. Among your fellow mayors of small towns, is there the appetite to really want to be front and center taking this on?
Well, I think it's the do, not necessarily talking about it, but doing something about it. We have, for example, the mayor who is the chair of Illinois is in Grafton, Rick Everlin, and he's a farmer, and they are doing all of the things that farmers should do as we look at the type of global warming and those kinds of issues. No, it's not a popular topic to be standing on the street corner talking about. But if you talk rationally, what is the impact? I can relate the Paris Accords in a different way. My city is a destination, is a tourist town. Mm-hmm. We will be getting the Delta Queen steamboat will be coming to the city. On that steamboat, somewhere around 67% of the people that ride riverboats are from foreign countries. We will have to work overtime to convince them that we are not idiots because we don't believe in the Paris Accords and global warming. And so when we reach out from the perspective that it's an international problem. We have to collaborate on those issues, and we look at more of a localized impact rather than something that's esoteric by saying it's global warming and so on. They can bite into what the impact would be in the city of Kimmswick, for example.
Mm-hmm. Now
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Colin.
Just as an example of that, of what the mayor's talking about, we had one of our co-chairs, mayor from Iowa, in New York Climate Week last month, or in September. And one of the things that the international community said to us, as well as the national community, said, Mayor, the impacts of climate risk are not out in the future. They're not 10 years away. They're not 5 years away. They're happening right now to you along the Mississippi River. And what they were talking about was the 2019 floods, mm-hmm. biggest and longest in U.S. history. And that, when you talk about impact and you talk about the dollars and cents that it costs someone in their backyard, that's really where you're going to get movement. This isn't something in the polls. It's not something on the coasts. It's something happening to us right now that we can feel in our pocketbook. And that feeling will get more intense as time goes on unless we address it.
And the members of your organization, your fellow mayors along the Mississippi, they're seeing this. Mayor Stang, this is something where they're observing these changes firsthand?
Absolutely. And as Colin was saying, this year's impact from our flood in Kimmswick, it was the second highest flood in history. Mm-hmm. And was very expensive to the budget of the city of Kimmswick, to the point at which we're allocating funds and so on in very conservative ways, if you will. The people in Kimmswick see it firsthand when you talk about, so you don't have to really explain the issues of flooding and so on because it's right in front of your door.
And does that translate in their minds to the need for international action, or do they still see this as something where they'd like to see local governments take the lead and keep the power more local, as opposed to the UN telling them what to do?
I would suspicion that local control is what you would be thinking about. So you can relate that. You can relate that to the building of levees. You can relate that to allowing floods, fields to flood, those kind of things on a close local level. Now, if you start talking about a bunch of people in Paris, well, that gets a little out there for them.
Colin Wellenkamp, is that hard to translate sort of these international issues that are affecting your members and their membership to what needs to be done on the world stage?
Not as hard as you'd think, because our farmers, we have mayors that are full-time farmers. We have mayors that have worked in the global commodity supply chain their whole lives. Mayor Stang spent his career in marketing of manufacturing before becoming mayor. So, they get that, and some of these farmers, many of these farmers, they have spent a long time developing markets abroad. Through relationships, through a gradually building of opportunities. And that's because the Mississippi River Basin is the largest commodity producing basin on earth. We can move more product more efficiently at a lower price point than any other nation in the world because of that river. And because of that, we have to approach these problems at a global scale, because that's who's buying the stuff. That's where our markets are. To keep those markets whole, the Mississippi River has to have a seat at the international table.
Colin Wellenkamp, Executive Director of the Mississippi Rivers Cities and Towns Initiative. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Glad to do it.
And Kimmswick Mayor Phil Stang, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.